In the world of international intrigue, few names spark as much alarm as the Cartel de los Soles, the Cartel of the Suns. This group, according to Washington, is a powerful narco-state apparatus embedded at the highest levels of Venezuela's government and military. The U.S. alleges that President Nicolas Maduro himself oversees a criminal network that uses state machinery to traffic drugs globally. These accusations blur the line between government and organized crime, turning Venezuela into a geopolitical flashpoint. The U.S. has now designated the Cartel of the Suns a foreign terrorist organization, escalating the conflict and raising the stakes for all involved. Understanding this alleged cartel is key to grasping Venezuela's future and the shifting balance of power in the Americas. The story is fraught with accusations, denials, and uncertainty. The name Cartel de los Soles isn't a self-chosen brand, nor is it an official title adopted by any organization. Instead, it's a label that emerged from the streets and whispers of Venezuela, a term coined by journalists, investigators, and citizens who began to notice troubling patterns within the country's military ranks. The nickname was born in Venezuela in the 1990s, a decade marked by political upheaval, economic crisis, and growing mistrust in public institutions. As stories of military involvement in illicit activities surfaced, the phrase Cartel de los Soles started to circulate, hinting at something hidden in plain sight. The name itself refers to the golden sun insignia worn by top generals in the Venezuelan National Guard. These shining emblems, meant to symbolize honor and authority, became a symbol of suspicion, implying that the military's highest ranks were not just complicit, but central to widespread corruption and criminal enterprise. The term signals that the rot is internal, not external, and that those meant to protect the nation are accused of exploiting it. It's a powerful accusation, suggesting that the very guardians of Venezuela have become its greatest threat, blurring the line between protector and predator. Over time, the label has grown from describing a handful of allegedly corrupt officers to representing a systemic problem. As the military's influence expanded under the governments of Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, so too did the reach of the so-called cartel, weaving itself deeper into the fabric of the state. Unlike traditional cartels, there's no official membership roster or single, clear leader. Instead, it's a shadowy network of powerful actors, military officials, politicians, and business people, each playing a role in a complex web of influence and illicit trade. The name itself conjures images of authority turned to betrayal, with state symbols allegedly used to facilitate a shadow economy. It's a reminder that the machinery of government can be repurposed for personal gain, and that trust in institutions can be dangerously fragile. It's a story of protectors becoming predators, and the military's chain of command morphing into a conduit for cocaine. The very people entrusted with national security are accused of turning their power toward trafficking and profit. The term is as much a warning as an accusation, a signal to the world that Venezuela's crisis is not just political or economic, but deeply rooted in the institutions meant to uphold it. Over the past several years, the United States has meticulously built a sweeping case against Venezuela's top leadership, signaling a dramatic escalation in tensions between Washington and Caracas. At the center of these allegations is President Nicolas Maduro himself, along with his closest advisors and senior officials, whom the U.S. accuses of orchestrating and profiting from a vast state-sponsored drug trafficking network. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, Maduro's government has allegedly turned Venezuela's military airfields, naval vessels, and even diplomatic passports into tools for moving massive quantities of Colombian cocaine across international borders. The U.S. claims this operation is not acting alone. Instead, it is said to be working hand-in-hand with powerful Colombian guerrilla groups, forming a transnational criminal alliance that moves hundreds of tons of cocaine each year toward the United States and Europe, all in exchange for lucrative kickbacks and political support. In response, U.S. authorities have issued sweeping indictments and offered multi-million-dollar rewards for information leading to the arrest of Maduro and his top officials, treating them as international criminal kingpins rather than legitimate heads of state. Economic sanctions have been ramped up, targeting Venezuela's vital oil industry and financial system, with the explicit goal of isolating Maduro's regime and pressuring it toward political change. U.S. officials now frame the so-called Cartel of the Suns as a direct national security threat, using this narrative to justify an increased military presence in the Caribbean and to rally international support for their cause. The message from Washington is clear. The Cartel of the Suns is not just a criminal enterprise, but a state-run operation, and the U.S. is prepared to use every diplomatic, legal, and military tool at its disposal to dismantle it. As the crisis deepens, the stakes for Venezuela's future and for U.S. foreign policy in the region have never been higher. Unlike classic cartels, the Cartel of the Suns is not a rigid hierarchy, but a loose, decentralized network. Experts say it's a collection of powerful individuals and cliques within Venezuela's military and political elite, each controlling their own turf. Generals might control ports or airports, politicians provide cover, and each faction pursues its own interests. These groups act as gatekeepers, taxing, extorting, and protecting drug shipments rather than managing the entire supply chain. The structure is fluid, with factions sometimes cooperating, sometimes competing. This amorphous setup offers plausible deniability, making it hard to target or dismantle. The Venezuelan government can dismiss accusations as political fabrications, while law enforcement struggles to pin down a leader. Dismantling a network of state actors is far harder than toppling a cartel boss. The Cartel of the Suns is a shadowy, resilient enterprise. In November 2025, the U.S. designated the Cartel of the Suns a foreign terrorist organization, a move with sweeping consequences. This label criminalizes any support for the cartel, effectively banning most transactions with the Venezuelan government and military. Foreign banks risk sanctions if they facilitate related financial transactions, tightening the economic noose around Maduro's regime. The FTO designation allows the U.S. to freeze assets, bar entry, and potentially justify military action. Recent U.S. strikes on smuggling boats hint at a willingness to escalate. The shift from drug traffickers to terrorists reframes the conflict, seeking to rally international support and justify aggressive measures. The move follows a series of escalating sanctions and designations throughout 2025. It's a high-stakes gamble, aiming to force a resolution to Venezuela's crisis. The world is watching to see what comes next. The Cartel of the Suns narrative is a battleground of competing stories. The U.S. and its allies accuse Maduro's government of running a narco-state, citing indictments and sanctions as proof. Venezuela's government flatly denies the allegations, calling them a U.S. fabrication to justify intervention and seize oil. Maduro publicly positions himself as a patriot defending Venezuela from foreign aggression, while his officials condemn the FTO label as political desperation. Caracas blames U.S. sanctions for Venezuela's suffering, insisting they fight the drug trade and pointing to seizures as evidence. The result is a polarized information war, with both sides accusing each other of lies and manipulation. The truth is obscured by propaganda and mistrust, leaving Venezuelans caught in the crossfire. In geopolitics, perception often becomes reality. Beyond the headlines and sensational news stories, a growing number of experts are asking a crucial question. Is the so-called Cartel of the Suns a real organized criminal syndicate, or simply a convenient label used to explain Venezuela's complex underworld? The term itself has become a fixture in media reports, but its true meaning remains elusive. While corruption and drug trafficking in Venezuela are undeniable realities, many analysts argue that the situation is far more fragmented than the term cartel suggests. Instead of a single unified organization, the reality on the ground appears to be a tangled web of independent networks, each operating with its own interests and methods. These groups may occasionally cooperate, but there's little evidence of a central command. Notably, neither the DEA nor the United Nations lists the Cartel of the Suns as a major criminal group in their flagship reports. Their assessments focus on broader patterns of organized crime and trafficking, rather than singling out this alleged cartel. Analysts like Jeremy McDermott of Insight Crime argue that the term Cartel of the Suns is more of a catchphrase than an accurate description. It's a phrase that captures the imagination, but may not reflect the messy, decentralized reality of Venezuela's criminal landscape. Even some former DEA officials, who have spent years investigating drug trafficking in the region, express doubts about the existence of a single, centrally coordinated cartel. They point to overlapping interests, rivalries, and shifting alliances rather than a monolithic criminal empire. The U.S. government's use of the term Cartel of the Suns often serves to simplify a deeply complex problem, creating a clear villain for public consumption and policy debates. This narrative can be politically useful, but it may not match the facts on the ground. If the experts are right, then U.S. policy and international efforts may be targeting a phantom, an organization that exists more in rhetoric than in reality. This raises important questions about the effectiveness of current strategies. The lack of consensus among experts and officials only deepens the mystery, leaving the true nature of the so-called Cartel of the Suns shrouded in uncertainty. What's clear is that Venezuela's geography and instability have made it a major cocaine corridor, and corruption is rampant. The U.S. has accused Maduro and his circle of leading a criminal enterprise, backing this with indictments and sanctions. But the true nature and structure of the so-called cartel remain hotly debated. Is it a hierarchical organization or a label for chaotic, self-interested networks? Public evidence is scarce, and much of the intelligence is classified, leaving outsiders to weigh official claims against expert skepticism and government denials. The scale and internal dynamics of these networks are largely unknown. The narrative drives policy, even as the facts remain fiercely contested. In this gray zone, actions based on uncertain truths risk unintended consequences. The Cartel of the Sun saga has global consequences. For Venezuelans, it's a matter of survival, caught between a government accused of crime and foreign sanctions that deepen crisis. The U.S.-Venezuela standoff threatens regional stability, raising the risk of conflict and refugee crises. The Caribbean becomes a potential flashpoint, drawing in global powers. This is also a battle of narratives, where information is weaponized and truth is elusive. The outcome will shape how nations confront crime, sanctions, and propaganda in future conflicts. Whether the cartel is real or a construct, its story is shaping policy and the fate of millions. In this shadow war, understanding the messy reality is more urgent than ever.